Yeah? You're all good? All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome back to the Engagement Theatre, which is sponsored by InEvent. And we are from InEvent. What a coincidence, eh? Myself, I'm Cecilia Lavin from InEvent, and this is Pedro. So just a couple of housekeeping rules before we start with our presentation for today. If you do want to ask any questions, you can access vvox.app from any browser, enter this meeting ID, and you can submit any questions, or you can ask them afterwards in person as well, obviously. And use the headsets, please, because otherwise you're not going to hear the content. But without further ado, Pedro, shall we get going? We are here today to talk about touchless, seamless, and streamlined technology, focusing on the travel for events.
So that's the session that we're going to find out how to travel business class free? Or?
Well, I would love that, but I don't think I can help you with that. I only got upgraded once, so I don't know. Maybe you got some tips. Feel free to share those. I would love to know.
I cannot share those. If I share them, maybe everybody will know those tips, and then and
then you won't.
Anymore.
You won't be able to travel business. That's very true.
We should share it. No, let's just forget it. Let's just share
exactly.
everything.
Let's talk about the technology. So obviously, we all know that the event planning process is so much more than just the event itself, right? Sometimes it takes months, years to plan an event, right? So it's not an easy job. I think actually events planning is listed as the third most. There's a lot of items that do needs to be covered, right? You're talking about pre-event, you're talking about the event itself and post-event. And all of these things obviously, requires different technology and different use of how we can facilitate technology. But I think sometimes we're also too focused on our journey, right? We're not thinking about the attendees, and it's all about the attendees, right? How can we make their life more easy? So I think that's what we're here to focus on today, right?
Yeah, so I think it's covering three topics today. So we want to focus on sustainability, how to achieve that, in the next area. Especially in the next, business travel is changing so much, and the new era is all about how to be sustainable, like traveling less and having, we're going to talk a lot about this, but having fewer connections actually helps the environment. So that's something that's really important. Yeah. The second thing is how to be focused on reliability, because today, you miss a connection or you miss a flight, and that's going to be a big problem for you. So how can technology help you supply that? And the third thing, what's the third point that we have?
Accessibility, diversity and inclusion. Yeah,
exactly. So the third thing is how to be more accessible these days. There are a couple of acts, in America that actually help with that. But you can see, for example, if you are on a wheelchair, it still is a big problem to get inside our airplane today. So we're going to be talking about that as well.
But first of all, there's still the C word, as I like to call it, COVID. We're over it, but we're not over it, right? And it changed the events world massively. I think it developed technologies that would have normally taken maybe 5 to 10 years to develop. And some of those are obviously virtual events. We're not going to talk about virtual events for 30 minutes. Do not worry. But what was sort of the key things that you saw, Pedro, that obviously is still staying with us in terms of the changes from COVID when it comes to virtual events?
I mean, related to travel or?
I think in terms of everything, talk about platforms and...
I think the good thing about the pandemic is that we had a huge influx of investment that would not necessarily come from other locations if it was not during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So this investment, from talking to other companies in the same space as we are, and even on InEvent specifically, is that we're able to shift, part of that investment post-COVID to actually go into areas where we're going to be developing for the next 2-3 years. So we're talking about travel tech, tech that's built specifically for shuttles, flights, and hotels. This money was sourced in the beginning to go through, development of virtual platforms, right? This was the focus on developing of video cameras, live streamings, broadcasting. That was the initial focus of that investment. But, with the quick change post-pandemic, back to 2022, end of 2022, there is no need to keep investing, all this huge amount of money in virtual solutions anymore. So we are seeing a very quick development of travel tech and also registration tech. So platforms are going to help you provide more paths for registration, provide more systems for on-site operations, like when you go and you print your badge, but also NFC tags. So all of those are only here today because of the investment that was raised through the pandemic initially for virtual technologies.
Yeah. And then obviously we got the obvious, right? Live streaming. So we're obviously sitting here as an in-person event, which is super important. That's the whole point of us talking here today. But we are also streaming the sessions, right? Because attendees are more, they're more picky about what events they will attend, right? Before, if you didn't attend the event in person, you couldn't see it, right? You couldn't experience it. Whilst now there is an option, right? So live streaming is still important, right? Do you see that customers are still using that?
Well, I think live stream is great, but like the ice cream that I just had was not available online, unfortunately. So,
he does love an ice cream.
I think it's really nice that you have broadcasting, and it's something that I mentioned throughout the pandemic multiple times. Mm-hmm. It was really good for accessibility, so it's very good content education tool.
Yes.
If you're going to have something that you want to educate your audience, it's like a training session or something, there is no better tool than doing broadcasting, because you have accessibility in multiple languages. Just, to say, like, some
closed
platforms
captions.
Have like closed captions, 180 languages available. So that's something that you can reach way more audiences that you can never do if you're in person, right? But that's something that the other use cases, like especially networking or travel, or even like travel experiences, I think they're way much better in person.
Yeah.
And there is not much to add there. Like, it's basically in person when it's something outside of the education scope. Yeah.
Well, one thing I've seen that's changed around the streaming elements as well is actually, again, it's all about the attendee, right? It's their choice how they view an event. So we've been working on giving the attendee the choice over what view they see during an event, right? So we have multiple tracks that people can choose from. So they don't, if they want to just look at the presentation, they can do that. If they want to look at the speaker, they can do that. Again, they can choose the language themselves. They can choose if they want closed caption, if they want to do a reaction. It's all about the attendee. It's not about the organizer. It's about the attendee, right? But obviously everything post-event, the data is important, right? And again, this is why we're talking about sustainability and things as well. And one of the things we'll cover in diversity and inclusion is we don't have enough data to make good choices. But is there anything around the post-event that you want to sort of mention before we go into these three different areas, or?
Well, I think travel, like, it's all about based on data. But if you go to the next slide, you're going to see that, what's the next slide? The one after that? Yes, sustainability. So travel right now, when I'm getting the data specifically for sustainability, it makes a big difference. And something that you probably have seen this on Google Flights, right? If you go on Google Flights and you're booking a new travel, you're going to see your carbon impact that you're going to have when you're actually traveling somewhere. So Google is actually going to offer you a few other options, like that's going to minimize your carbon profile if you actually have something that's built on that. So that's just an example of technologies that are going to, show you very clearly, because sometimes you don't actually know, how you're actually, restricting or actually working with the environment to actually produce your travel results. So one thing is one person traveling to a trade show like this. Another thing is when you have a conference of 2,000 people, going somewhere, and then you're going to have the impact multiplied by 2,000, right? So data helps you analyze that. So you can actually see, if I change, like one flight path, I'm going to be able to save a lot of carbon in this world just by changing one flight. So that makes a really big difference.
I really like Google. I don't know if anyone has seen that, but Google actually now send a monthly newsletter or monthly email to tell you how much you've traveled. Because it tracks your phone. That's scary, by the way, but it tracks you wherever you go. And they send an email to say, this is how many times you've traveled around the world so far this year. This is how much emission you've saved. This is how much emission you have spent, and things like that. And I think that's great because it makes you more aware, right, of what you're doing. One thing I loved seeing at an event actually as well is when they had both a virtual and in-person part of the event. If you chose virtually, you still put where you were based, and it would tell you how much emission, as an example, carbon footprint you saved by not going to the event in person. So it made people realize that actually they had a really positive impact as well.
Yeah. So, there are a few things that I think they're really being well developed there. One thing that I think is really nice as well is that this reminder option that they have. So you can actually put there like the goal of how much carbon you actually want to spend on your travel, right?
Yeah.
So you can say, I'm going to an event, but I want to find a flight that's going to be, below, 2,000 or so, below 1,000 or so. And then once the same thing that you do with prices, you can now do with carbon footprints, right?
Yeah.
So that's really nice because you can actually go there and find the exact flight and the exact airline, because that's something that I've also learned. Depending on the airline that you choose, the carbon footprint is very different.
Change.
If you get, for example, a Boeing, 747, the footprint is way different than if you get a newest, 787, right? So those things really matter when you're selecting a flight. For you, it's almost the same experience, but for the world, it's not. For the environment, it really makes a big option there. So these are cool options that we're seeing on Google and other systems that we work with.
Yeah.
So when we embed those in our platform, it's something that we are using their data to actually analyze those and make those decisions for you.
Yeah. There is actually a company they're based in the UK called Isla. They focus on sustainability in the events industry, and they've actually designed their own technology called Trace that basically helps people track all sustainability elements for the events industry. So you can integrate it into different things. So that's something that's good. But then talk about digital technologies, right? What else can we do during an event to support sustainability?
Well, there are so many other things that we can do.
Yeah.
Replace paper, I think, is one of those that people say they want to do every year.
Yeah.
But in the end, there are cheaper technologies that are offering that. QR codes are really nice to do that. So, but what are you seeing currently, Cecilia, on the operations? Like when you go and having calls with customers, where actually they say, when it comes to badging, for example, they want fewer options, more recyclable options, more environment-friendly options.
Well, the badging is absolutely a key one. The problem that I think most clients have is that they don't understand the cost difference, right? So, for example, if we look at a paper badge, right, like we've got here, we're talking about maybe $1 per badge, depending on how many sort of badges you'll print. If you look at sustainable, compostable, I guess you can call it, they're about $3. Right? That's 3 times the price. Saying that though, there are actually companies out there that will take the badges afterwards. So you can put up a box and say, recycle your badge, and you can do that and send it in. Again, it's the things that need to be part of the pre-planning process. But QR code and MFC, I think are super easy ways of utilizing technologies in a smart way. Like NFC, right? You got the little bracelets, but there's also NFC tags, right? They're only this small, little round paper ones. I think you can buy them on Amazon for $1 or something, right? You can put them on your phone wherever you want, and people can basically put in wherever they want that tag to go to. Right? So you can create a virtual business card and basically link that to that NFC. And instead of having to scan the badges, you literally just touch and that's it. You will get the information in essence. Things like that you can do, but it's underutilized.
Yes.
So I think those are the things that I think will come up later on as well when we talk about AI, because I think AI is super underutilized in the events industry as well nowadays. Yeah. This is an important topic to us in events, and so should be to all other companies, diversity and inclusion. Why is this important here?
Well, diversity is something that actually we have a list on LinkedIn that we posted recently of top 10 things that you can do to improve diversity on your events.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to have a very clear guideline on your call for papers on exactly how you're going to provide inclusion and how that's going to be actually included on your event. How you're going to make this a big difference on your speaker program. Mm-hmm. There are other things that are really important as well, is to have a panel, when you're talking about this and delivering this worldwide. Sometimes you're limited to just one scope or one specific region, and diversity matters locally as well. So when we work with our teams, we're not just thinking about I'm going to work with that specific diverse local team. I'm actually going to have like diverse teams that are worldwide, and that makes a difference as well when deploying this for our company and also customers as well. They really prioritize this these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we looked at some research, obviously, coming into this, which we're happy to share a link to later on as well. And actually, the research said that actually 72% of workers that's aged between 18 and 34, so it's the next generation, right? The people that we need in our industry right now, 72% of those said that they would consider turning down a job or leaving a job if they felt that the company and their manager did not support diversity and inclusion. That's a huge number, right? That's big. You know, and they are the ones who's going to facilitate and help your events, right? If we think about all the people who's been in the events industry for 30 plus years, they're going to do the same thing over and over again. We need young blood, right? And they're the people who's designing our technology. They're a lot more tech savvy than we are. Well, I am, for sure.
Yeah, I think being fair sometimes is even more important than other things within a company. So diversity is one of those things that you gotta be fair. You gotta treat everyone well. It just doesn't make sense, in 2023 to have any policies that are not moving towards that direction. And just be inclusive, like we love to be inclusive just because we have benefited so much from this. We could have not gone to that stage right now if we didn't have diverse, because our team, was built by people from, 5 or 7 different countries that built this presentation for us. So diversity actually enabled Innovent to be here today. So that's one of the reasons why we think this is so important. Yeah.
But I think also diversity and inclusion will also come in when we talk about accessibility, right? Because an accessible event isn't just, have you looked at, is there a ramp if you're a wheelchair user, right? Can you read the app or whatever it is, right? It's about so many more things, and particularly virtually. So we have at Innovent, we have a accessibility console, right? That the users can choose how they view the environment. What have we focused on there and why?
Accessibility specifically, like it's a combination of different things. So first, it's like we help you see your connection and how that's going to track. But accessibility can also be hidden. Because sometimes the people that have a disability, it's not very visible to your eye. So what actually we're going to see is that the system is going to be able to enable diversity for all. So there's a very good standard, by NIST, which is the North America Standard Organization. It's backed by the US government. They actually put together all the requirements that you must have in order to be compliant. And those go into detail that you have never seen, such as, for example, the color, the contrast between the colors that you're going to have on the web page, the way the fonts are, the color background, how the elements move and how quickly they move, and what's the animation size. So all of those things are very good, and thinking about those and following a protocol is really good. So it can help with everyone, and having this on your platform, is key for any system.
Because days. Like, for example, when we're talking about, it's called neurodiversity, right? That we've been talking about. And Google has launched an initiative for them. I feel like I'm promoting Google here. Don't worry, I don't work for them. But, they, because they, for example, flashing images in a video can be extremely disturbing for someone who has a neuroimmune disease. And organizers won't think about it, right? Because flashing images is fancy. Look at this, it's showing all of these things. But for someone that can trigger an epileptic fit, as an example. So having given them the tools in order for them to choose what they want to see and don't want to see should be mandatory, right? But we don't consider it enough. Yes. Right?
And even on mobile, sometimes you have things that work on the desktop, but they do not work on mobile. And then a person that's on the mobile device, they cannot access something. So these are very few examples of how accessibility is important. And it's really a complex thing. So it's just important that you have people that are thinking about this and actually implementing this on platforms to make this work. Yeah.
And one thing moving into when we're going to talk a little bit more around the hospitality side in terms of flights and accommodation, one thing that I really like in London is the government provides, first of all, like a little button for anyone who's pregnant, right? So it says, I'm pregnant, please offer me a seat on the tube. So they basically get this button. So people, even if they're not visually showing, as an example, they can then, they have this button so they can then use it. But they also have a button for someone who has an invisible disease. They might struggle to stand up for longer periods of time, but they don't have a visible sort of disability. They get a sticker to say, you know, actually, please offer me a seat. I have an invisible disability, as an example. It's to help them that, you know, to sort of promote that in a better way. Why can't we use that at events? Like, I'm not saying like, you know, but, you know, things like that could be adapted to make people more understanding of what's going on, I guess, right?
Yes.
So in terms of obviously then other things in terms of hospitality and travel, is there anything else you want to mention in terms of that? Or
Well, you travel a lot. Like, what are your personal tips? What can you share with the audience? What things that you do when you travel that you're like, oh, like I feel that I'm the only one that's doing that, you know? I mean, the legal stuff that you do. Like.
only legal stuff. Well, I think to be fair, like it's obviously hard, but we always pack too much, right? As a woman, like, you know, 5 pairs of shoes and you probably use one anyway, right? No, but things like that actually has an impact as well. It's traveling as light as possible and thinking about how it will impact, you know, the event. Like arriving in Las Vegas from London, like that's a long journey. You know, I have to arrive a couple of days before the event because otherwise I'm not going to be able to focus and deliver actually a good event as well. But that also takes you out of the office. Think about actually how is it impacting your general work. I haven't looked at my emails probably for 2 days and I'm stressing tomorrow is going to be hell, isn't it? But, you know, it's things like that we need to consider. It's not only for you as the organizer, it's about the attendee. How does it affect their schedule?
Yeah. So I think, you know, like the new technologies that have appeared in the end, like they're all very cool because you can easily integrate with new technologies today. Like we did that with ChatGPT. So you can actually put content together on the landing page. But that's just one example of technologies that you can actually develop. Another one that I find really interesting for travel, it's called skip lag. You know, some companies there it's not allowed on their terms of use. Some companies actually embrace this, but it's that idea, you know, like that we were talking about of like you book a flight and then there is a connection and then you want to skip one of those connections, you know, because sometimes the flight with a connection is cheaper than the flight that's direct.
Yeah.
You know, so that concept, you know, got really popular, I think, you know, last years. And that's something that, you know, these new technologies allow you to embed that and make this available for your travel. So there are a lot of creative hacks, you know, how people get upgraded and everything. And these are really cool things, you know, like when you're actually, you know, traveling and having a better experience these days.
Yeah, no, I agree. So talking about ChatGPT, because this has been a buzzword. I hear everyone talking about it over the last couple of months. And, you know, without giving ourselves, you know, too much credit, we were actually the first events management platform that integrated with ChatGPT. We didn't do it because of the attendees. We did it because of the organizers. We know that it's super stressful to organize events. And obviously, you know, right now, we even have less time now than we ever do because our time frames and the lead times are shorter and shorter. So this is actually helping the organizer. Can you tell these guys a little bit about what we're doing here? Like, how does it work? If no one has heard about ChatGPT, what does it do?
ChatGPT, I think, is an awesome technology because it's something that you can train the system, so it's going to think forward for you. So you can actually put together, you know, like things like, you know, put a landing page together for me with like an agenda for 200 people. And then this is going to put actually agenda, you know, together for you. Like you're going to have there like the main sessions, you're going to have the keynote speakers.
Yeah.
Another thing that we did, like an exercise, is like give me a few speakers for my next event that's going to be, I know, in LA.
Yeah.
And then they actually can recommend speakers based on the topics that you are actually exploring.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can then, you know, decide to book or not those speakers. So these are a few things that we are exploring, and those are available on the in-event product with ChatGPT. It's basically an AI that's going to get data from where it is and actually, you know, create things. So then we can actually, you know, explore those and do more with our time.
It's honestly, it's fascinating. Like when I used it the first time, I was like, it can really do this. Like you type in a sentence and say, write me an email inviting these people to a conference in Las Vegas. And it just types it up. And what really is amazing in our platform as well, it also used the dynamic links. It actually writes up the content using the dynamic links, and you just need to cross-check it, right?
Yeah, and then the ideas are limitless. Like we can actually have, for example, someone that's going to book travel for you. So you can say, I also want the platform to book the travel for my guests, or you're going to find the flights between, I don't know, Atlanta and Las Vegas. So it's going to find you the options, book the flights for you automatically. So that's the beginning of a new generation of event revolution, because the AI is going to be able to automate most of those tasks that you're not, it's not the main thing that you want to do, but then those can be automated with the AI. So you can focus on the creative things and also the creative process of the event planning.
I've always said for the last 5 years that AI is underutilized in events. So this is an amazing step, an easy way to actually get to know how AI is used and how it can actually benefit us versus making life more difficult, right? So we're actually running out of time. We got 2 minutes left. Okay. So what do you think is next? Like, we know in-person events is here to stay, right? It's we're never going back to what it was before. But what do you think else is next in terms of technology and how we develop the events industry?
So I think next is going to be event tech in the UK. Yeah. That's the next event.
That's the next one in November.
November.
Shout out to ETL. Yeah.
But honestly, like events, we're just in the beginning of our revolution. We're actually seeing right now many new technologies, but that never gonna replace the event planner. So the event planner has that creative ability to actually define the experience, and now in-person events are something that only event planners can put together. And I think that's really the key, he's focused on the creative process of designing an experience to see how people are gonna connect, and then let the systems in the background automate all your work. So that's what we're hearing from our clients, actually have demand for more events, but we just don't want to spend, all this admin work. I just want to enable more and then lower my costs on the admin work, because I want to focus more on the hotel's experience, the flights, everything related to that. So, just in this last year, we had so many technologies. If you take the last 3 years, we had the rise of all virtual event platforms. That's something completely new. Then we had now event travel tech being the new thing, ChatGPT. So we're going to see a new revolution in the next 12 months. That's going to be amazing for everyone involved. Yeah.
Amazing. Do we have any questions from the audience? Well, we did a good job. They know everything now.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you want to have a further chat to me and Pedro, we're just on the booth over here, or I'm in the back. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yay!